Well, hello, my friends there on YouTube. Welcome back. Hello, hello. It's been a little while since I posted a video. That is true. I apologize for that, but only in politeness. Nothing to really apologize for. I took a little while there to get my mind right. It's been really warm. I was sick one day this week, like usual. Still trying to recover from that. I've been balancing out my mind in terms of what amplifiers I'm going to get. So today's topic is exclusively about amplifiers and what the differences in amplifiers are. I have this discussion going on Facebook, the North American Audiophile something, whatever it's called. And a lot of people have chimed in with their opinions and perspectives, and you know, it's almost 50-50. Some people say yes, they sound different, and a lot of people say no, amps don't sound different. And I'm wondering how that can be the case. First of all, if there's a difference, how is it that not everybody agrees? Like, apples don't taste like oranges. It's a big enough difference. We all know apples are not oranges, so you can't really compare them. But if you compare apples to apples, apparently then it's okay. If you get a Granny Smith or a green apple, then they both kind of taste like an apple, but you can taste the difference in them. One, you could look at them and say, hey, that one's green, this one's red and green. Unless, of course, they're not both brown. So my curiosity has led me to this search. I've asked the question, do amplifiers sound different? And the extension to the question is why or why not? And some people have just said, yes, they sound different, and why not? They don't have any... I don't want to insult anybody, but when you ask a question like, do they sound different, why or why not? In quotes, I asked, be technical if you want to. So that implies in my question, I'm looking for technicalities, but obviously you don't have to. If you answer, yes, they do sound different, or yes, and why not, that's completely useless information. I'm not handing out a census. I don't want to know, like, are you 40 years old plus? Check mark. Yes, I am 40 years old plus. That's not what I'm asking, obviously. And this is in a group of what I assume are elder, educated, grown adult people who are participating in the audiophile world. They're part of a Facebook group. These are people that I turn to as my peers in a community to ask such technical questions. And I'm getting shit back from people that sound like they're in grade 7 or worse. I don't understand. But that is a different story. That's a question for my psychology side, and I have all kinds of theories about that. We're not going to get into it. I don't have the time to deal with that. But amplifiers, 100%. I'm in this market right now where I want to get a new amp. Oh, excuse me. I am yawning because I am tired. And I'm not editing any of this out. If I stumble on my words, if I don't say the right thing, if I yawn, if I burp, if I fart, y'all just going to have to deal with it, okay? So I'm in the market for a new amp. This one sounds awesome. I've used it for a little while now. The Orchard Audio Star Crimson Ultra. So it's 2-channel GANFET amplifier modules with a, I think it's SMSP or SPSM or whatever. It's switch mode power supply. SMPS, switch mode power supply. There you go. They got the acronym right. Cool. We're learning something. So it's got a switch mode power supply and 2 GANFET modules to power stereo. They're 500 watts each in these modules. So that's really cool. I appreciate the way they sound. My Rotel that I had, which was a 5-channel amp, I had 4 channels. Live long and prosper. I had 4 channels going out, 2 to this side, 2 to this side, and the 5th channel was dormant or idle. So it had 130 watts per channel, and that's all driven from Rotel before, and I was getting a certain type of response from that amp. Now, between this one and that one, Class AB in the Rotel and Ganfet Class D in the Orchard Audio, I can tell that there's some differences, but it's not really in the high frequency or clarity. It's in the bass texture, where I feel like, and I say feel because I didn't measure it, I'm just using my ears and my memory. I didn't A/B demo them either, so that's a thing that I can't do. I have a sense that they control the bass more. This one controls the bass more. I don't believe it's because it's 500 watts, because I was bi-amping, and that would actually be 280, 260. So I don't think it's because of the wattage, but I do believe it's because of the power supply and the amplifier type, or the transistor type. These are very, very efficient amps. Class Ds are like 90 plus efficient, the way that they handle switching. And they're getting better all the time. Some of them out there now are the best signal to noise ratio ever measured. Like over 100 plus, 110 plus in some cases. 120 I saw in an audio science review. Now, I don't know how they're being tested. I don't know what the standards are. I'm not familiar with that stuff, but we're noticing, at least in the distortion levels, power output levels, and signal to noise levels, that they're way better. But does that mean better sound? I don't know. Honestly, I can't tell you that equals better sound. Now, in the conversation on Facebook, a number of the things that were mentioned was things like the kinds of transistors used, the kinds of capacitors that are used, the boards, the circuit board's trace size, the grounding circuit. If your electricity doesn't flow properly, like the same way if you upgrade a muffler on a car, you get more horsepower because the air can breathe better. The amp can move stuff better. So maybe stuff like heat sink design, the way that it's attached to the panel, like there's all of these kinds of differences. How close is the power supply to the circuit boards? There's so many variables that can cause what people are criticizing as very, very small differences. Now, yes, for the sound, I can change the movement of my speaker and change the sound more than the amp, but for the love of God, that's not the fucking point. The scientific method, you have this room, those wires in that position on that amp with the same song, the same sound signature, the same whatever. Nothing else in the system changes. Scientific method, just the amp changes. So why people would criticize my question and come back and say, oh, well, the amp's not going to sound any different than the sound treatment in your room. And if you did, you know what I mean? Like, that's so argumentative and not the point, that I don't understand the mentality that, you know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean. And again, I don't mean to offend anybody, but if you are offended and that shoe fits, then think about what you're saying and why. Why counter it with, oh, but if you did this and this and this, it would sound different anyways. Like, yeah, but that's not the point. It isn't the point. It's changing the topic is what it is. The point is, does the amp sound different? If I put Rotel and Emotiva and like Vitas Audio and Griffin Audio and Krell and DiAgostino and you know what I mean? Like all of these types of amps, or integrated amps, or all these amp brands, Outlaw, Buckeye, Orchard Audio, Purify, NAD. If we put all these amps here, type of amp the same, like if you put tube amps, all of the tube amps will be compared together, because then you're talking about apples, oranges, pears, or this type of apple versus that type of apple versus that type of apple. You know what I mean? Like Granny Smith, green apple, McIntosh, pun intended. Then you're comparing apples to apples, but they're amplifiers, but they're clearly different tastes. So do all McIntosh apples taste the same? Or are there variations of, you know what I mean? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to get at? Like, which side of the tree was this one on? Is this one bigger or smaller? Like, when did you harvest it? Like, what are the variables that make a difference in an amp? I mean, clearly when you're making a production line, every amp measures the same from the factory. But like, what happens if you swap the caps? You know what I mean? If you swap the capacitor board to a different brand, or a different tolerance percentage, or a different type of capacitors, or the resistors are a slightly different type. You know what I mean? Then what would it measure like? When on the same production line, in the same amps, from the same brand, in the same amplifier, what happens if you change those caps? Then you're keeping all of the other variables exactly the same, and you're changing just the capacitors. Does it change sounds? I have to assume that it does, because each of the capacitors that we use is used for a reason inside the amp. It's doing work. It's handling the electricity. The same reason why DACs can sound different, because the chips are different. It's doing the same work. Essentially, the job is performed the same way, but how it's implemented can be different, right? Like graphics cards on a computer can vastly affect how much frame rate there is. It's still a computer. It's still an Intel. It's still like a PC. It's still running on Windows. But for some reason, this like 3080 card and a 4090 card, it's the same. You know what I mean? Like, it's both a graphics card. They're essentially made with the same parts. One has different specs and it creates different, you know what I mean? So I'm wondering, as a part for part or modular for modular, how and what causes differences in amps. I don't see a consensus. I see arguments out there. I see people that say, I've listened for this and this and this, and I don't hear a difference. And then I hear some people say, I have a whole stack of amps and I rotate them because they sound different. I change them the way I change my speakers. Speakers are more likely to sound different than amps, yes, but that doesn't mean that amps don't sound different. The question still remains, what about an amp's circuitry makes it sound different? Because the question I asked online, and it's a very ignorant one, but it's to stir the pot, is, if amps sounded all the same, why do we have 200 brands? You know, the same thing about shoes. You have Reebok and Nike and Adidas and Fila and LA Gears, and I'm showing my age now, I'm being funny. But you know what I mean, Puma, Converse, they all make shoes. They all make basketball shoes, Under Armour. They all go on your feet. They all have laces. They are all probably made out of rubber and some sort of synthetic leather. They're probably all made somewhere in Asia somewhere. What makes any one of them different? What about any one of these shoe designs make them different? Is it where the stitches are? Is it the materials they use in a certain area? Is it the kind of rubber? You know what I mean? And then some of the other arguments that I've been hearing are, well, if you had solid state amps, transistor amps, well, GaNFETs make transistors too, and so do Class Ds, but it's different. Anyways, it gets so nitpicky, but if you had all these amps measured, they were all spec'd the same, spec'd. I don't know what that means, but like if it's 100 watts, 8 ohms, does this, like how many of these specs are you going to match to say, yes, they sound the same? Well, like, of course they do. Then you're talking about like, every Rotel amp down the line sounds the same because they were made at the same factory. They're all spec'd the same. Well, of course they're going to sound the same. The question is, why doesn't, Rotel sound like McIntosh? Why doesn't, why do these Outlaw doesn't sound like OSD or Emotiva, you know what I mean? Is it the power supplies? But then you could do like, why does RCam not sound like Emotiva? What else has changed in the design? It's still class G or H power supply or class AB amp modules. Why does Marantz not sound like Denon? It's the same brand now, but why? So stuff like that. Questions like that. It's not a matter of yes and no, because that's too childish. That's like if you're in grade 5, you're like, do you want chocolate or vanilla? That's not really helping anybody. The big question is, why? Is it the type of caps? Is it the brand of caps? Is it their tolerances? Is it their materials? What is it about the topology or the circuitry that makes it actually sound or perform different? So when you spend $400 on an amp, or you spend $4,000 on an amp, they're both class AB, they're both 200 watts. What is it in a $4,000 amp that makes it sound any bit different from a $400 amp with the same class AB? That's the reason why I'm asking. Because if you can identify what it is in an amplifier that makes the sound different or potentially different, then you can evaluate and say, well, I don't want to spend $4,000 to get this much of a difference in sound or whatever they are, and you could just spend your $400 and be fine. I don't know. Anyways, that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm presenting it today. And hey, buddy, look, feet with a really stupid looking tan line. And for anybody that's curious, this is actually the scar where I had my ankle fused and I have titanium pins in my ankle. It looks a lot worse on camera than it does in person. Anyhow, you guys can comment. The word of the day is going to be amps, AMPS. It's 17 minutes of me talking to you with my feet out. In other news, I fixed my ceiling all the way around, and I have a spider on my ceiling. I'll get to him in a minute. But yes, I reattached the tiles. I keep the door closed in my closet. The bass response is much better there. Low frequency is pushed into the room and I can hear more texture down below 40 hertz now. It's actually really nice. So yeah, updates will be coming eventually. I have an amplifier in my mind, but I don't know which one yet. Hence the topic of today. Amps. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I hope this conversation is worth something to you and you have something to contribute. I appreciate you watching, you for being here, for following, for adding to the conversation, for commenting. I'll see you guys in the next one. That's 18 minutes. Have a great day. Happy Friday. We'll see you soon.